Good morning. Good morning. Okay, let's get started, Rabbi Sai. So let's just review in the text where we are. We learned that if a person is a zaken ve'eno lefi chavoda, which means he's a respected elder, and by elder we mean either a Torah scholar or a respected older leader, senior leader within the community, they can exempt themselves. If it's beneath their dignity to be seen, it would be an embarrassment to their station in the community to be seen with this lost object in the middle of town. They can exempt themselves. And we learned yesterday also that there's a distinction between whether it's patently obvious that they're doing a mitzvah or whether it's not patently obvious, such as a person just carrying something, around town where no one sees that it's clear that he's doing it for Hashavas Aveda. And the Rav Shulchan Aruch says, V'haholech, and this is where we're up to if you can see my cursor, V'haholech b'derech hatov v'hayashar, that a person who walks on the good and straight path, Yasa lifnim mishuras hadin, should always go above the letter of the law, in this particular halacha certainly, umachzir ha'aveda b'chol makom, ve'afal pi she'ein alefich vodo, and should always return lost objects, even if it is beneath his dignity. V'chol adam yesh lo lasos lifnim mishuras hadin kamo shekasafti lomala, and every person should do this, as I wrote above, when we talked about the issue of when it's going to cost me money to return a lost object. Remember, we said, yes, technically you can exempt yourself if there's going to be any cost to you involved at all, but you should try to go above and beyond, because otherwise you'll always be able to exempt yourself from doing chesed. V'yesh omrim, shehachacham eino reshai lezazel b'chvod toraso. There is another opinion that states that a Talmud Chacham, a Torah scholar, does not have permission to degrade his honor. In other words, it's one thing if I'm a president of a shul, or I'm an otherwise respected community leader. Then it's one thing to say that I should go above and beyond the letter of the law. But if my stature is defined because of my Torah knowledge, then for me to forego my honor is really to forego really the Torah's honor, and that I don't have a right to do. Ella imbala asos lifnim mishuras hadin yishalem mikiso, and so therefore you're sort of between a rock and a hard place, because on the one hand, you don't have a right to forego the Torah's honor. On the other hand, you feel sorry for the guy, and you don't want him to lose his beloved donkey or whatever it is. So sometimes the even bigger solution in this case is to simply let his object get lost, and you pay him for whatever the cost of the lost object is, instead of going foregoing the Torah's honor and walking away. V'lo amru harav shemachal al kavod kavod amachol ela b'tosefes kavod b'kima v'hider. So, normally we say that if a father wants to forego his honor, a father is allowed to. But if a Rav wants to forego his honor, sometimes his ability to do so is limited. And the only thing, according to some opinions, that he's allowed to forego on is if he tells people, you don't have to stand up and you don't have to open the door for me. But to actually actively degrade the Torah's honor by doing something that looks, at face value, that looks less than honorable, that a Talmud Chacham does not have a right to do. Avol enu rashai lezalzel es atzma b'fnei habrios shezehu bizayon haTorah. But he doesn't have a right to degrade or to denigrate himself in the eyes of other people, because really he's tampering with the Torah's honor, not his own honor. Okay, so v'lisvara harishona ein ze bizayon haTorah, keven shemiskabin l'chvod shamayim. But according to the first opinion, that grants permission to a Talmud Chacham to lower his honor in order to return lost objects, that opinion says that you're not degrading the Torah's honor if you're doing something that is for Hashem's honor to do a mitzvah. So, on the one hand, a person can say to himself, the great rabbi can say to himself, I represent Torah to the community, and I don't want that stature to be lowered by my having to schlep something that is less than honorable through the town. On the other hand, the counter argument that the Rav Shulchan Aruch says is equally legitimate is that the fact that I'm doing this for the sake of heaven to do a mitzvah is honorable to the Torah. And that is giving honor to the Torah, even though other people don't perceive it as such. Shaharei eno osa kein b'shalo ela b'shel chavera. And it's specifically because he's doing it for his friend, even when he wouldn't do it for his own property. Ubal nefesh yachush la'atzmo lahachmir b'shel Torah kisvara ha'achrona b'makom she'efshar kigon sheyodea shel mihem kelim elu v'yishalim lo v'yotze l'divrei hakol. And if you want to be truly machmir on this matter, then the best thing to do is, if you know who the lost object belongs to, and you want to protect the Torah's honor in the eyes of others, so then just write him a check for whatever the object that it was lost is worth. Not so easy being a great Torah scholar these days, huh? Because it's going to cost you money, right? On the one hand, you've spent all this money buying your long coat and your big hat, and you walk around town and everyone honors you. Now it's going to cost you money to do that. You want to be the big Torah scholar? All right, so you got to pay for it now, man. Okay, no more, you can exempt yourself from Hashavas Aveda, but now the proper thing to do is that if once you've exempted yourself, now write the poor guy a check, because you couldn't lower your honor to deal with the lost object. Okay, but then he writes in the parentheses, Aval im eno yodeya shel mihem. But if you don't know whom they belong to, if you don't know who the donkey belongs to, right, the lost donkey, ef shelo lasos kedivrei hakol, then you're really going to be stuck. You're going to have to choose one opinion over the other. Ki lisvara harishona yesh lo litle mulahachriz, because according to the first opinion, that you have a right to forego your honor and lower your esteem in the eyes of the public, you really should have to announce them and try to return them, so that you can track down the owner. And whoever claims them, you should return it to them. And according to the latter opinion, you're not allowed to engage in this mitzvah, because you're degrading the Torah's honor in the eyes of others. And so you really will be stuck in that kind of situation if you want to try and fulfill both opinions. So so the Rav Shulchan Aruch actually does not tell you the solution. He basically says that if you find a lost object, you don't know who it belongs to, so that in order to properly fulfill the mitzvah, you're going to have to schlep it home with you, keep it with you, go to the bother of putting up signs and trying to find the owner, when you can exempt yourself because it's zakein ve'eno lefi chvodo, it's beneath your dignity to be seen this way in the public eye, nonetheless, you have to go lifnim mishuras hadin. And if that's the case, then on the one hand, lifnim mishuras hadin requires you to return it. On the other hand, the Torah's honor requires you to not be seen in public with this. And since you don't know who it belongs to, you can't write the guy a check. So you really are stuck. And he doesn't provide you with a solution other than just saying you're going to have to decide what to do. Really, that's ultimately what he ends up saying, is that you're going to have to make that decision when you encounter it. And I guess it'll depend upon the circumstances, but it's really hard for me to imagine in today's world anyone being faced with a real world situation like this I can't even conceive of a scenario, a real life scenario, where a person, a rabbi today, would be able to exempt himself from returning a lost object because it's not kavod haTorah. It's not honorable to the Torah for him to be seen in public with this. Can
Rabbi,
any,
could he not get one of his students or pay someone to do that, to do what was necessary?
I suppose he could. I guess the argument is that what if he finds it in the middle of Yorkdale Mall or something like that, in the middle of the Promenade Mall, and all of a sudden he starts schlepping. He finds Fluffy in the middle of the mall, and he doesn't want to be seen walking a dog or something like that.
Maybe I'm thinking about this great Hasidic leader who has his entourage with him all the time and could just point to one of his students and say, "You take care of this."
Yeah, I guess so. I guess it pays to be a Hasidic leader. Okay, but then you got to pay for all that extra kugel. So, all right. So let us.
I think we said it is costly to be a rabbi after all.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So let us go on to the next halacha. He writes in Lamed Vav. Really is a continuation of the concept of being embarrassed to return a lost object because you don't want to see it, you'd be seen in public with it. Va'afilu mi she'eno talmid chacham v'lo zakein mechubad ela shehu ish nichbad machmat ma'ala acheret. Let's say a person is not a Torah scholar. He's not a revered senior of the community, but rather he's a person that is worthy of honor for some other kind of advantage or station that he occupies. Kagon Osher o Mishpacha. Let's say he's considered to be the wealthiest person in the city, or he comes from a very miyuchas family, a family that has a lot of yichus. O Davar Acher, or some other area of prestige. These are very hard to find today. These kinds of because even Jeff Bezos, probably would want to walk incognito in the public square. So, but in back in the day, there were stations that were very defined within society. So let's say this person does have a station of honor because of either his wealth or his family. ומפני זה הוא מתבייש מהבריות שיודעים ממעלתו, and for that reason he is embarrassed to be seen in public because the public eye sees and recognizes him as a person of proper station. Viroim oso nosin biyado kalim elu, and he doesn't want to be seen carrying these objects, which are below his station. Eno chayiv min hadin, so he too can exempt himself halachically, technically. Aval misha, and he sort of leaves it at that, right? So that even if objectively a friend of yours would tell you, I can't believe you would let yourself be seen with that. Okay, who knows? Maybe it's. Can someone think of different situations? I mean, I came up with a poodle or a donkey, but
How
other
about a
than that,
girl's how about a little girl's doll?
a little girl's doll. Okay, all right, Barry, we'll go with that. He's walking around town with a Barbie doll. Okay, aval misha eno chashuv be'enei habrios. But if let's say someone is not uh, does not occupy a high station in the eyes of the public, rak shemagbia da'ato umechashev et atzmo. He says, but he himself, he's a right. He's a great man. A great what's the phrase? He's a great man in his own time, or he's a great man in his own mind, right? Let's say he's a great man in his own mind, right? And it's not that people consider him to be so chashuv, but he considers himself to be chashuv, right? Umechashev et atzmo, and he gives himself that chashivus, that sense of importance. Umitbayesh bazeh mehabrios uve'eineihem, and he therefore is embarrassed because it's beneath his own dignity of what he imagines himself to be, but really people don't even know who he is and couldn't care less who he is. So Einzo Cherpalo, Uveinehem Einzo Cherpalo. The public does not see this as anything degrading in their eyes because they couldn't care less about this guy. Harei Chayev min hadin lahachziram. Then in that situation, he is obligated to return the lost object. Afal pi she'ilu hayu shelo lo haya machzirim la'atzmo. Even if this lost object belonged to him, he would have been too embarrassed to be seen in public, right? But the fact that it belongs to someone else and there's a mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda, he has to force himself to swallow his pride and to go ahead and do this. And this halacha really is almost like a Musar vort, right? It's basically the Rav Shulchan Aruch basically speaking to the reader and saying, are you really as chashuv as you think you are? Are you really that important? Do you really think people conceive of you in the way that you conceive of yourself when you look in the mirror? Come on, let's do a reality check, buddy. And if in this reality check it turns out that people do not view you with the same kind of prestige that you view yourself, maybe ask your wife. That's probably the best thing to do because she'll give you the reality check if you can't do it yourself. So then you have an obligation of Hashavas Aveda. And you can't exempt yourself by saying, well, if the only thing I can think of is I'm thinking of a Mad magazine, right? A guy finds a Mad magazine. He says, I wouldn't want to be seen with a Mad magazine in public because people are going to think like I'm a knucklehead and I'm a nerd or whatever it is. But that's not an excuse. Even if it was yours, if your argument is, well, if it was mine, I wouldn't want to be seen publicly with that, but that doesn't exempt you from the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. You still have to do it. Okay. Now, the Ein Tzarech Lomar.
How about, Rabbi, how about something that would, I don't know, like a Christian Bible or something that would denigrate?
Be there. Those are mine, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Oh, someone
I
is
didn't
there.
use them yesterday. I don't know why I didn't.
Someone's not muted, I guess.
I'm gonna.
Well, just in case it gets really bad.
Okay. They are muted now, but
Okay, so I'll unmute and say, how about something like a Christian Bible or something that would denigrate the Torah if they saw a great Torah leader carrying it? A Quran or something, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I have both in my house. I wouldn't be so embarrassed to have those, although some people may.
But if you were walking down the street carrying it, or a big cross or something like that, I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't be wearing it around my neck, that's for sure. That's.
You don't want to carry a cross over your back or something like that.
I was going to say that would be too big of a cross to bear.
Yes, indeed.
I beat you to it. Yeah, I mean, you find this huge crucifix. I'm not sure whether it's even permitted for you to return it to its owner. A religious artifact that may qualify as avodah zarah, according to some opinions.
Right, because then it's not your own honor that you're worried about. Maybe even a simple Jew couldn't do it. No one could do it.
It's possible. Could you exempt yourself from returning a religious artifact of someone else's faith because it may qualify as avodah zarah? I think the argument can be made, but you'd have to really verify. You see, here's the thing. If it's, let's say, a gold crucifix that is a jewelry item, let me ask you this question. Is a Jew allowed to sell a crucifix? Can a Jew sell a gold crucifix as jewelry? And if you're going to tell me no, that's a problem, then you've just put out of business half of the Jewish jewelers in North America, right? So how many of you are in the jewelry business? Anyone on the line in the jewelry business? No, but you probably have a mechutin who's in the jewelry business or something. I can tell you with certainty that there is a heter for a Jew to engage in the sale of crucifixes to non-Jews, because many poskim are of the opinion that the crucifix itself is not avodah zarah, it's an adornment, and it helps identify you with someone who believes in God. And people today who wear a crucifix are not necessarily idol worshippers. If anything, they're probably Gentiles that you would like to associate with instead of Gentiles that you'd prefer not to associate with. And if that's the case, then if you find the gold crucifix, you do have a mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda. But it is conceivable that there would be real avodah zarah. Like I went into someone's house once, and they had a little Buddha that they had in the corner, and they would put food regularly in front of the little Buddha and burn incense. That actually may be more problematic. There are those who argue that that's still not avodah zarah; it's a real more of a cultural thing. But that looked pretty much like avodah zarah to me. I got to tell you, it sort of freaked me out. So I might. I do feel that there's a very strong argument that in that kind of scenario, you could exempt yourself from returning it. The only thing that I'm in doubt is, would you be allowed to actively destroy such an avodah zarah icon? And I don't have a clear answer, because I haven't studied the issue carefully enough to tell you definitively that a Buddha statue is definitively avodah zarah. But you'd be surprised at how many people probably in Toronto have little Buddha statues in one of the rooms of their homes. Anyone from the Far East, there's a good, unless they're Christian, there's a good chance that they may be doing this.
Rabbi, is there an issue? Let's say you're a jeweler and you're selling crucifixes, and you sell to a Jewish person, let's say, whose the father is a non-Jew, the mother is a Jew, so even though they may not consider themselves Jewish, they're technically Jewish.
That it may be more of a problem. It's possible, because there is such an opinion that states that Christianity is not avodah zarah for a non-Jew, but it is avodah zarah for a Jew. Is it possible? Yeah, although I think that even there you could find a heter, because just because you're selling a crucifix does not mean that you're aiding and abetting them to worship avodah zarah. You're just giving them a nice piece of jewelry that helps them identify themselves as Christian. But they're probably, so I don't think you could, I don't think that we could say that it's absolutely forbidden. But at the same time, if you know of such a situation, you may want to have a sidebar conversation with the customer and say, your daughter or your son that you're buying this crucifix for, that they're Jewish, really. And if they tell you I know and stay out of my business, then you have to make a decision whether you'd like them as a customer or not.
Just today, with our assimilated society, it's probably a situation not only for jewelry, but even for non-kosher food or other averas that you wouldn't want to give to somebody who's technically Jewish, right? You got to be careful.
Serving non-kosher food to someone who's halachically Jewish is absolutely usher according to halacha. That you certainly cannot do, and that's why
but sometimes
it's problematic to be a food manufacturer if you're manufacturing treif. If you know that a significant if you know that a percentage of your business is going to be going to Jews, that does become a problem, unless you can make the argument that the person who's buying your food is not Jewish, and it's they who are feeding the food to Jews. So that certainly, but to directly, let's say, as a waiter of a non-kosher restaurant, for you to serve Jews is very problematic. I know that there are kids, even in our own community, who get jobs at non-kosher restaurants, and they serve food invariably to Jewish people who patronize the restaurant. That's a problem halachically. Good, understood.
Must be even a bigger problem in Eretz Yisrael, where there's restaurants that aren't kosher, and almost all the clientele are Jewish.
Yeah, although unless they're serving pork, it's very hard to find non-kosher food in Israel. You have to look really hard to find something that's truly non-kosher.
Oh, I see. Okay, it depends on what standard you're holding, but we wouldn't call it treif necessarily for those Jews.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Next, halacha. Ve'ein tzarich lomar im lo haya machzireim la'atzmo machmat hatorach shelo haya chafetz litroach lisa'utam leveito. He says, now what about a scenario where it's got nothing to do with my honor, but it's got to do with the amount of exertion and schlep that I have to do in order to get this object home, in order to get this object to the owner? Can a person look at himself and say, listen, if this was mine, I would just leave it in the street. It's too much of a burden for me to schlep it back to my house. Hol v'hem kelim pechusim u'demea mu'atim. They're not very valuable utensils that I lost, so I'm not going to go running after them and looking for them in the parking lot or in the wherever I left them. So can a person say to himself, well, since these are of such little value that I wouldn't bother myself if they were mine, I would just leave them and forget about them. Maybe I can use that argument to exempt myself from returning someone else's lost items. V'lo mipnei she'inam lefi chavodo, shehu chayav min hadin litroach bahem ad she'agia l'rishus habe'alim. He says, but nonetheless, if they have any value, you still have to exert yourself. In other words, you're not concerned about your honor, but you are saying that this is not something that I would trifle. It's a trifling object. It's not something that I would exert myself to bring back if it was mine. So why should I have to do it for somebody else? So let's say a doll or a stuffed animal, right, that has one of its eyes missing. So if it was my child, I would not bother because it's lost an eye, and who cares about it? But I'm thinking about one of those Toy Story movies. I don't remember which one that I watched with my grandkids. But the point is that that it may have tremendous sentimental value to the owner of that stuffed animal. That might be the stuffed animal that child sleeps with every night. Ki b'shalohu rashai levater al mamano mipnei torach gufo, v'lo b'shel chavera. Because so you cannot make that argument, because you can forgo your own desire. In other words, you're allowed to forgo your own possessions because you don't want to exert yourself for them, but you don't have a right to forgo other people's possessions because you don't want to exert yourself for them, even if for your own object you wouldn't have exerted yourself. So, like the Imrei Yaakov says, he says, what are we talking about? Demari ba'adam she'ino nichbad, v'hu ragil litol kelim pchutim. We're not talking about any kind of embarrassment that you would get by being seen with these items. Rak heicha sheish torach gadol. He says, but it takes a lot of effort. Sham eno ragil litlam. There, if it took a lot of effort, you would probably just leave them there. Kevin shedamei mu'atim ve'eno kedai lo atircha avor zeh. Why? Because it's just not worth the effort if it's my own object. But nonetheless, for your friend, you have to make the effort. And remember, we learned this in the book Hashavas Aveda Kahalacha. We learned that if it's an object that is so not valuable that no one in their right mind would bother trying to retrieve this, then you can exempt yourself. And what we'll do is we will get to that Amir Tzashem tomorrow. Okay? So we'll pick this up, God willing, tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone.